The morning sun hit Oakcrest Meadows just right, throwing neat shadows across perfect lawns, white fences, and a street so quiet it felt curated rather than lived in, the kind of silence that only breaks when someone decides to enforce it. I was tightening the final screw on my new slate gray mailbox, admiring the clean line where it met the post, when I saw them crossing the road in formation. The HOA board, three figures marching like suburban storm clouds. In the lead was Mara Green, sun visor angled like a crown, clipboard clutched like she'd written the Constitution herself, her face fixed in its permanent expression of someone who believed she ran not just the HOA, not just the street, but the world. Behind her lumbered Doug Reeves with his tape measure holstered at his hip like a weapon, and flanking them was Karen Mueller, who smiled at me the way people smile when they're sure they've caught you doing something wrong. "Good morning," I said, wiping dust off my hands. "Mr. Carter," Mara snapped, not acknowledging the greeting, "your mailbox color is non-compliant. It violates Oakcrest Meadows standards." I looked at the mailbox, clean modern slate gray, and smiled. "That's fine," I replied calmly. "I'm not under your HOA." Her eyes flickered, confusion, insult, disbelief before her face reset like a machine correcting itself. Doug snorted. "Every house on this street is under our HOA." "Not this one," I said. "You should check your map." For a moment they stared at me like I'd spoken a language not yet invented. Then Mara's tone sharpened. "You can't just opt out." "I didn't opt out," I said. "I was never in." She straightened, offended by the concept. "We'll call the authorities." "Go ahead," I shrugged. Doug tapped his phone like he was dialing divine intervention. A few minutes later, the hum of an engine grew louder. A patrol car appearing around the corner with sunlight bouncing off the windshield and red-blue lights washing over the perfect driveways. Neighbors froze mid-lawn mow, mid-dog walk, mid-sprinkler adjustment, pulling out their phones like something exciting might finally happen on this otherwise controlled street. Little did they know the real story wasn't between me and the HOA, it was under their feet, written in old county lines no one had bothered to check. When I bought this place, I thought Oakcrest Meadows was the kind of neighborhood you see on postcards, rows of nearly identical houses angled perfectly toward the street, lawns trimmed to matching heights, shutters in their three approved colors, sandstone, ivory, fog gray. Even the mailboxes stood in formation like soldiers receiving inspection. I'm 36, an engineer by trade, a man who thinks in numbers and tolerates neighbors the way people tolerate airport announcements. The house came through a county auction, a foreclosure property most people ignored because the previous owner let his paperwork lapse. That didn't bother me. I like things that needed fixing. But I didn't realize this neighborhood didn't run on friendliness. It ran on rules, rules printed, laminated, obsessively upheld by the woman who essentially built herself a throne out of bylaws. Mara Green, mid-50s, always in linen, always wielding her clipboard like a scepter. She'd been HOA president since the first truck unloaded the first box of the first resident. Beside her was Doug, the treasurer, whose tape measure compensated for things in his personality he probably didn't want to admit. During my first week, I found a note on my garage door: "Welcome to Oakcrest Meadows. Trash bins must remain hidden from street view at all times." 2 days later, another: "Your porch light appears to be 25 watts above community standard." I hadn't even unpacked my dishes before becoming a problem. But what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that my property sat just outside their jurisdiction by 27 beautiful feet. The county clerk confirmed it. A faded line on an old map put me exactly where I wanted to be, close enough to enjoy the peace, far enough to avoid the tyranny. That peace lasted exactly 6 hours before Mara emailed me an urgent compliance demand, invoking something she called the Community Annexation Clause, a fictional piece of HOA fantasy that sounded impressive only if you didn't know actual law. I printed her threats and put them in a folder labeled HOA Correspondence, old engineer habit, document everything. Then the real storm began. Every morning a new fine, every afternoon a new email, every evening a different board member strolling by pretending to check curb height, but really photographing my house like they were building a case. Someone even uploaded a blurry photo of my yard on the neighborhood forum with the caption, "Non-compliant property threatens Oakcrest aesthetic." Neighbors whispered. One woman left me an anonymous note: "They did this to the Wagners too. Don't back down." So I didn't. I went to the county registrar's office and discovered something incredible. The HOA's 2018 expansion proposal, the one Mara relied on, had been rejected and never resubmitted. Legally, Oakcrest Meadows had been enforcing authority it didn't have for 6 years. My land wasn't just outside their boundary, I owned utility easements beneath half the block. Their sprinkler lines on my land, their fiber path on my land, their pretty greenbelt drainage on my land. Every threat they made was built on expired paperwork, mine were built on law. Then came Saturday, the day of their so-called mandatory compliance hearing. They set up a folding chair courtroom in the cul-de-sac. Neighbors gathered like spectators at a public execution. Mara stood at a portable podium, Doug arranged stacks of papers like he was the prosecutor in a made-for-TV courtroom drama, and even a police officer showed up, leaning against his cruiser, arms folded, watching with the expression of someone who had expected a quiet Saturday. As I crossed the street with my single folder, conversations hushed. Mara cleared her throat into the squealing microphone. Mr. Carter, she announced, this hearing addresses your continued refusal to comply with Oakcrest Meadows community standards. You can't refuse something you're not part of, I replied. Gasps fluttered through the crowd. Mara stiffened. Let the record show the homeowner is uncooperative, Doug scribbled dramatically. She listed violations: unauthorized mailbox, unapproved landscaping, obstruction of visual uniformity. Under which recorded covenant, I asked, are you enforcing these rules? That question shook the room more than any accusation could. Mara blustered. All of them. That's not an answer, I said. Your last legal filing was in 2010. No annexations, no expansions, no authority past your original boundary. Doug sputtered that everyone followed the rules. Following them doesn't make them legal, I said. The officer's eyebrow twitched upward. Mara snapped. You are undermining community order. I'm asking you to follow your own filings, I replied. She ordered Doug to read the annexation clause. I cut him off. Proposed amendments aren't law and yours was rejected. Neighbors murmured, some shocked, some delighted. Mara's composure cracked. We will call law enforcement, she warned. I turned to the officer. Actually, since you're here, maybe you can clarify something. He walked over, calm as a quiet river. What's the issue? Mara pounced. This resident refuses to comply with HOA regulations. We request your assistance enforcing community law. The officer looked at me. I handed him the certified county map. He studied it. The silence was deep enough to hear a sprinkler 2 streets away. Finally he said, ma'am, he's right. This property isn't under HOA jurisdiction. Mara froze mid-blink. Doug deflated like someone had unplugged him from the wall. This is a civil matter, the officer continued. The HOA can't enforce rules on land it doesn't govern. Whispers erupted. Some people laughed quietly. Others looked relieved that someone finally challenged the regime. Mara tried one last time. We'll pursue retroactive annexation. Good luck, I said. The county already rejected your amendment 6 years ago. The power shifted in that moment visibly. The crowd stood straighter. Doug hesitated when Mara demanded he write a final notice. He looked to the officer, who simply tapped his citation pad in a way that made the tension break like thin ice. I smiled, the kind of smile you give someone who just realized they brought a clipboard to a legal fight. The hearing dissolved. Mara stormed off. Doug followed. The neighbors dispersed, half shocked, half liberated. As I walked back to my house, the sun glinted off my slate-gray mailbox, the one they tried so hard to erase, standing exactly where I put it, exactly where it belonged. A reminder that perfection isn't something you owe, it's something you choose, and in Oakcrest Meadows I had chosen independence and won.